In this video, we will show you how to replace your catalytic converter assemblies on this Chevy Tahoe. This will be located under your vehicle. Let's get into it. Okay friends, let's get started on our job. The first thing you want to do is make your way safely underneath the vehicle. Make sure the exhaust is cool to the touch before you continue. On your exhaust, you're going to find that you have 4 O2 sensors, 2 downstream O2 sensors located towards the rear and 2 towards the front. We need to disconnect each one of those O2 sensors and remove them from the catalytic converter pipes. So go ahead and find each of the connectors and disconnect them. The downstream O2 sensor on the driver's side is located just above this cross member. We'll reach up in here. We're going to separate it from the cross member. To do that, you can just use a small prying device or a trim tool. Once that's separated, we'll continue on to removing the locking tab. With that removed, the next thing you want to do is disconnect the lock here. So we'll just grab onto that, pull it up and away, and separate this. Every time you disconnect an electrical connector, take a peek. If you see any funny colors, that's corrosion and it would need to be dealt with. Now we can start removing the O2 sensor from the catalytic converter pipe. To do that, you want to make sure you have an O2 sensor socket. Slide that right over this. Once you remove your O2 sensor, you want to give it a close inspection. Make sure it is still reusable. If the threads look like they're damaged in any way, it's a good idea to replace it. Now you're going to want to set this aside and mark it so you know exactly where it goes during the installation process. Now we can do the exact same thing to the other downstream O2 sensor. That's obviously located on the passenger side. The connector for this will be located up above the frame. We'll make sure we mark this one and inspect it as well. Now we can move along to the passenger side upstream O2 sensor. The connector for this one will be located on the outside of the frame, just behind your body mount. Now we can remove that O2 sensor from the pipe. Quick inspection, make sure you mark this one as the passenger side upstream O2 sensor. Now we can move over to the driver's side upstream O2 sensor. This one's going to be the hardest for you to gain access to. That's located just above your front drive shaft on the driver's side. Now we can follow that wire down to where the O2 sensor connects onto the catalytic converter pipe. Slide it right up on here. Now the next thing we're going to have to do is apply some pressure underneath the transmission or transfer case, essentially just holding it up a little bit so we can remove the cross member that makes its way underneath the transmission. I'll use a small block of wood so I'm sure I do not damage the aluminum of the transfer case. Now to start removing this cross member, have a look inside this rectangular cutout. Inside this area, you're going to find that you have two 15mm headed nuts that hold the studs that come down from the transmission mount through the cross member. Remove each of those nuts. The next thing we'll do is remove our 4 mounting bolts that hold the cross member to the frame. For each of these mounting bolts, you'll find that you'll be using a 21 on each side. You have a bolt that comes through from the rear towards the front, and on the forward side you have a 21mm nut. Over on the driver's side, the bolts are in the opposite direction, coming through from the front towards the rear. Make sure you give your hardware a quick inspection. It's a good idea to make sure that you at least leave one of these on each side while you continue. Alright, now we can make our way back to that catalytic converter pipe. We're going to start disconnecting it from the muffler pipe. So if you were to follow that to the flange, you're going to find that you have 2 15mm headed nuts holding the studs in place. Remove the pair. Now we can move along to each of our forward flanges. These are the flanges that hold the catalytic converter pipes to the manifolds themselves. On these, you'll find on each one of them, there's 3 15mm headed mounting nuts holding them in place. Remove all 3 of the nuts from one side, then make your way over to the other side and do the exact same thing. Now we can move over to the passenger side. We're going to do the same thing, but keep in mind these 3 nuts are the last things holding this pipe in place. Now we'll remove our final mounting nut. Keep in mind this exhaust will shift around on you. Be extremely careful it does not fall and potentially hurt you. Now it's time to grab onto that catalytic converter pipe assembly. We're going to start wiggling it around and attempt to remove it from the vehicle. Now with the pipe out of there, the next thing we're going to do is continue on along the passenger side manifold. On this manifold, you'll find that you have a gasket that's pressed into place. Go ahead and pry it out of there. This is easiest if you come from the outside of the frame right through that passenger side wheel well. Now that we have the gasket out of there, the next thing you want to do is pay attention to the mating surface along here. Let's use a little bit of sandpaper and clean this down. Make our way over here, we'll do the same thing. Now that we've cleaned both of the front flanges, let's make our way to the rearward flange on that muffler pipe. For this, we're just going to use some sandpaper. We'll give this a nice sanding, give it a close inspection, make sure that the seal is still reusable. Once you've cleaned both sides, we're going to go ahead and install this gasket on the passenger side manifold. We'll put this in position and then drive it up and into the manifold, being extremely careful not to damage it, in which case it won't seal properly. To press this up in here, I'll be using a flat plate. Double check to make sure it's seated all the way around. Alright friends, let's get ready to install our brand new catalytic converter assembly. We're going to start with the driver's side. On this side of the flange, you'll find that it came with a circular gasket. You want to make sure you put that on the top of the flange, right inside of that slot. Now once you have that properly in place, we'll continue on by putting the flange up over those mounting studs, start on the 3 mounting nuts, but leave everything nice and loose. Now we can move along to installing the passenger side catalytic converter pipe. While we're doing so, we're going to make sure we put those studs into the back side of the muffler. We're going to align that front flange, get the flange into place, and start on all 3 of our mounting nuts. Once you've done that, with the rear still loose, let's continue on to the center area. We'll slide these 2 pipes together. Now we can make our way to that muffler flange. We'll start on these mounting nuts. We are not going to tighten these yet. We'll save these for the end. Now we can start tightening our exhaust catalytic converter to the manifold mounting nuts. When we do this, we want to go in a crisscross manner. You also want to make sure that you torque them to 39 foot-pounds. Now let's make our way over to the passenger side. We'll make sure we tighten these as evenly as possible. Now with your kit, you'll find that it came with a specific clamp. This is the clamp that you need to use in between those 2 pipes. Slide this right around. When you put this in place, you want to make sure you have it approximately halfway on this flanged area. Never too close to the edge because it might not seal properly. Now when we tighten this clamp, you want to make sure you tighten each of these nuts evenly. Don't just tighten one down until it's very tight and the other one's pretty much sticking off the end. We'll tighten these until we watch the 2 pipes crimp together. Double check to make sure it's completely secure. You do not want an exhaust leak in this area. Now once that clamp is tight, let's continue on to the flange that holds the catalytic converter pipe to the muffler flange. Once you have those snug, torque them to 30 foot-pounds. Now it's time to reinstall our crossmember. When we do so, on the passenger side, we'll take those 2 bolts and slide them through from the rear towards the front. Start on each of those mounting nuts and then go over to the driver's side. Those 2 bolts come through from the front towards the rear. Start on those mounting nuts as well. Once you have all 4 of those mounting nuts started, go ahead and snug these up. The torque for each one of these will be 70 foot-pounds. At this point, we'll continue on to removing the support from underneath the transfer case and then make our way back to the cross member for those 2 mounting nuts. Once you have both of those nuts snug, torque them to 30 foot-pounds. Okay, we're in the final stages. At this point, we're going to continue on with our O2 sensors. We marked them when we were removing them, so we're going to continue on by installing them in the proper positioning. I'll start with the driver's side downstream. As you're doing this, be careful not to twist the wires too much. You don't want to damage them. Now, when you go to snug this, you want to bottom it out and then torque it to 31 foot-pounds. Now we can reconnect that electrical connector, press it until you hear a click. Once you've done that, you also want to make sure you lock it in the proper position. Slide that right on through there. Make sure it is secure. At this point, we'll secure this to the cross member. Press it right in there. Now let's make our way over to the passenger side downstream O2 sensor. Same process. Carefully screw it in, torque it to 31 foot-pounds, and connect that connector. Let's follow that connector up here along the top of the frame. Press it in, listen for a click, make sure that is secure, and lock it down. Now we'll press that into the corresponding hole in the frame. This can be a little bit difficult to find. If you had to, you could use a mirror. Okay, now that we have both of the downstream O2 sensors installed, it's time to move along to the upstream O2 sensors. We'll start with the one over on the passenger side. Now we can take that wire, we'll bring it up and over the frame. Reattach it to its mounting area here. Listen for that nice click. Press that through. The next thing you would want to do would just be to resecure this. Ours is kind of dangling because the bracket is broken. All right, we're cruising along. Let's finish up with that last upstream O2 sensor over on the driver's side. This will be the hardest connector to connect in because you do have the exhaust pipe and the drive shaft in the way. We'll just press these two together and then re-secure it. There we are. All right, now we can re-secure this O2 sensor wiring harness. We'll press that right into position. Okay, friends, we showed you how to install your catalytic converter assemblies in your vehicle. At this point, go ahead and carefully slide out from underneath the vehicle, start it up, and make sure you don't have any exhaust leaks. After that, take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.